a lot of people who have worked here as doulas or what we call as midwives or assistant in birthing. Most of us know the modern terminology of birthing. There is a ovum, there is a sperm, it meets, you get a baby, it goes through its phases, and birth occurs as it is. But Vedic conception, a lot of times, some people here are from yogic background, some people here are from Kundalini background. So it all starts from one algorithmic concept, because Vedic concepts are not scattered, they all come from one. And what is true in yogic lineage, like we call the concept of Bindu, where we call Shiv Shakti or male energy, female energy, or sun and moon. The same thing happens inside the body. So it says creation happens when two forces which are joined together separate, and there is a kind of a tension within it, which starts the process of creation. So for that, in a human body, there is a creation which is occurring in someone, and there is a creation which is occurring outside someone. So let us say a males. So our offering is the creation occurs outside me, and a woman, the creation occurs within her. Now, there is a concept of, when we talk just about human life, there is a concept of a good, healthy progeny, and there is a concept of fertilization. So a lot of time, you can have fertilization, but the baby might not grow to the full part. You might have a baby, but it might be ridden with diseases, genetic expressions, other expressions. So fundamentally, what Vedic sciences says, that for anything to grow, you require a seed, you require a good encasing, like a field. Like for example, if I take an example of a crop, so you require a good seed, you require a field, you require the rains to come at the right time, you require the right kind of sun for it to grow, and the right time of harvest. So this is the same thing which is seen in a human body. You require a good uterus, you require good quality of ovum, you require good quality of sperm. They have to come together at the right time. If fertilization occurs, there has to be an implantation site. Then it has to require all the nutrients to grow. Eventually, if everything goes absolutely well, then you will get the right kind of crop when the time comes. And this thing is understood in nature form also. If we go back into the history of India, we have got a lot of this fertility cults. We have got this Navratra, we have got this festivals, which are basically harvest festivals. So you understand that as a woman undergoes a menstrual cycle, then she sheds her menstrual lining, then after a period of time, she is viable to gain the seed and create a baby. Similarly, the earth during certain times goes to a time where it prepares itself to receive something. Then it receives something, then it grows the crops, it gives you the fruit. And this happens in a very cyclic manner. So the Vedic concepts and the human concepts are not separate. And this thing is understood in all the kind of literature, Yogic literature, Tantric literature, Vedic literature, Yogic literature, which comes from this one concept that the cosmic creation happens in the same way, in the same derivative form, from macro to micro. So eventually, if there is the first burst, when there was nothing, something happened. Creation occurs in similar stages everywhere. And this cycle from a human point of mind is understood. So the whole concept of fertilization here occurs of how good the sperm is, or how good the male seed is, how good the female seed is the encapsulation, the uterus getting the right kind of hormones, the right kind of juices. During the birthing period, is the hormonal response, the enzymatic response absolutely proper so that the child grows with all the care. That prepares itself for a smooth delivery. After the delivery, what kind of procedures happen so that the child goes through its initial stages to stabilize itself, to be an independent life. And this is how in the Vedic system, the concept of birthing in relation to nature is understood. And eventually things started developing in a very individual manner to cater to things which can go wrong in terms of diseases, in terms of childcare, in terms of mother care, in terms of birthing. A few of things which will be discussed today. So I think in a short nutshell, this is something which you can introduce the subject with, though it is, you can understand it is a vast subject. And it has got a lot of intricacies with different fields of sciences. Ayurveda is not the only one, herbs is not the only one. Sometimes people can do it with breathing techniques, sometimes people can do it with simple disciplines. Herbs could be added. And we have to understand Vedic sciences are not restricted to herbs. These are concepts which are still prevalent today. Like even if during birthing, if we say that earlier times there were separate rooms called Sutika Graha for birthing, people used to take women into a separate house and then give birth. Fumigation was done, kind of sterilization was done. Today also we follow the same patterns. Only thing what has happened is that the things which are used for fumigation earlier times, today the chemicals have changed. The sterilizing agents what were used earlier times, today the chemicals have changed. But the protocols have remained the same. And this is the point I always try to make when I introduce the subject of Veda, that protocols will never change. The utilities what you use will change and the knowledge will remain the same. If any aberration is found with this knowledge, it will lead to short-term or long-term diseases. And probably we can delve on this subject as the questions come.
So I'm wondering about how you would advise about a pregnant mother who might be thinking she wants to protect herself from the energies, the psychic energies, and from the worry and anxiety right now. Knowing a little about where you're coming from, I know you often recommend that we immerse ourselves in everything, and it's very good for the baby to already know something about the real world. So in light of that, with what's happening now, what would you say?
See, the best option I would say is to look at life around you. You have been to India yourself and you've seen that people give birth in the most, unfavorable conditions. Like they are working in construction sites, people are spitting there. Some spits might contain tuberculosis, a lot of things, they eat from somewhere and nothing happens. The quotient here is said that if your blood quality, I'm not saying quantity, if your way your vayus into the body, how the nervous system, the hormonal system is supporting you in a much better way, you will have proper birth, you will have a healthy baby. There is no quotient that you stay in a very sterilized environment, you get the best kind of food, what you feel is nutritious enough, and you're going to get a healthy baby. We have seen this across, across countries, that people who get the best healthcare sometimes do not even conceive. Some people who do not even have the nutritious value, they conceive babies again and again. So the quotient here, again, I come back to the Vedic point, is that is 4 factors. If your seed is proper, if the ovum which is created is proper, if the baby which is formed is getting the right kind of nutrition at the right time, if your enzymatic and hormonal response is proper, you will get a good child. What does this mean? Let us say you're a construction worker. She might not have the access to the best kind of food and nutrition, but she's waking on time, she's sleeping on time, she's doing whatever physical work she's doing on time, she's eating on time. So whatever goes into her body, her digestive juices are secreting and creating qualitative blood. So she's getting that immunity. There are a lot of people who sit at home, they do not sleep on time, wake on time, they just keep on eating food which they feel is nutritious for the baby in terms of vitamins, carbohydrates, proteins. And eventually a lot of complications start happening. The uterine artery resistance starts happening, the child amniotic fluid starts increasing, amniotic fluid starts decreasing, sometimes the baby slips down because the muscles are not working. Now slowly, doctors are suggesting that, you sweep the floors during 7th month, 8 months, so that you will get a good birthing. And these all things are mentioned already back in the Ayurvedic text, in the Vedic text. Why? Not because these are recommendations. They follow a simple logic, that you follow the sun and the moon. Those people are acting like the moon acts on the tides, it also acts on your blood vessels. The forces of nature also act in the way you sit. The gravitational force acts on you, the electromagnetic force acts on you, the weak and the strong nuclear force acts on you. And this acts from the macro to the micro. And once we start understanding these things, we understand your immunity, the way you're aligning with nature is important. Earlier times, I make this reference that people used to cut the navel cord, after they get birth with a sharp instrument, because that time this clamping was not there. And it was said that after the 7th and the 8th day the baby is formed, then he should be protected, because otherwise he'll get seizures or epilepsy. Why? Because that time, after cutting, they were more likely to get tetanus, they were more likely to get So they knew about these microbes. They knew about these things which was around them. Fumigation was there. So we have to understand this concept of why they were first instilled. No one is like stupid enough to write that, fumigate it, do this. So in today's world, when we have access to so much of information, so much of dietary recommendation, one has to just forget and understand there is no fixed rule telling you that, okay, if you eat this, you're going to get a healthy baby. Of course, certain studies are there, like, because a lot of people don't eat non-vegetarian food during pregnancy. A lot of people don't use heaty food during pregnancy. Certain people suggest supplements like folic acid to prevent neural tube defects, which is quite logical because in earlier times during pregnancies, women were given certain foods which were heaty in nature but not actually causing problem to the uterus. Nowadays, that concept has changed. People don't take a risk with anything. They just eat formula food. They just eat food which they feel is sustaining their system. They are looking at quantitative analysis. Is my hemoglobin proper? So let us see if in pregnancy, a lot of time hemoglobin goes down. So people will give iron supplements. Is it required? Because studies have shown that if you take more iron supplements, it is more chances that your baby will get a problem afterwards. But a lot of people give iron tablets, folic acid tablets. So this quotient that, I need to do something for the baby within me, I need to protect it from something, has to be stopped. To understand that if you're unable to even sustain a baby, life will not allow it to happen. There are a lot of people who have got no problem, they're proper healthy, but they don't get pregnancy. It is called as unexplained infertility. A lot of women, even after having no autoimmune antibodies like antiphospholipid antibodies, anticardiolipid antibodies, they still go through miscarriages. They have the best nutrition, the best care, but if you see it is there. And these things have been mentioned in the ancient texts, why these things happen. And again, we go back to the same thing. If the seed is proper, if the nutrition is proper, if your uterus is proper, you will get fertilization. If that baby sustains for 4 months, that baby you do whatever the baby is not going to, the chances of it coming out naturally are 100%, unless and until it has got some genetic disorders like Down syndrome or whatever, which we do in the antenatal scan after 5 months. Those things, apart from that, it goes proper. So for that, you have to get up on time, sleep on time, be aligned with nature, do not overeat. Certain foods are mentioned in Ayurveda. You have studied yourself, so you know first month, second month, what diet to be kept. So you're not putting too much load onto your system. You are using less resources and creating more qualitative blood. That blood is directly nourishing the baby. And these things, when you start understanding this entire yantra, this entire mechanism of how exactly it flows, and I think so a lot of these problems go away. I have treated a lot of patients who have got habitual abortions, who have been, and by using just this simple rice water mechanism, which about, people get full-term pregnancies with absolutely, no problems with the baby. So it is about what you put inside, what it is converted, how qualitative it is, how much it is supporting your system through infections. That much benefit your baby will get. How strong your muscles are, pelvic muscles are, how strong your posture is, how the gravitational forces are acting on you, will assist you in easy labor. So all these things have to be planned right from the start. In Vedic times, the baby was planned, not like how we plan financially. It was planned, to get the best progeny, to get the best 9 months, and to get the best way after birthing. And after that, the child care for a period of 1 year to 2 years till he or she becomes independent.
So you're saying to continue following the technical protocols and try to ease their minds about what kinds of stress they might be experiencing, because I think that's what they might be concerned about, the fact that might be affecting the enzymatic expression and the hormonal patterns in a negative way.
Yeah, because once you get a baby, it is a hormonal change. So you understand some people get depression when we have heard, some people get depressed when they get pregnant. Some people get, very elated. Some people suddenly become traumatic. They fear everything. They don't even want to go out. They keep sanitizing their hands. And that is not like a good thing. If you see the history of microbiome, there are 380 million viruses out there. 80% of those viruses carry our genetic code. So many of them are in your gut. This microflora, this things which you are taking every time with your surroundings is in fact imparting immunity to your child. If you become too fearful, too stressful, it will be a very painful process. And eventually what will happen, it will start creating muscle rigidity in the uterus. It will start creating hormonal dysfunctions. Insulin might shoot up. Amniotic fluid might shoot up. These things have happened. If you see studies which I have done, this is how it has happened. And I'm giving you a very opposite comparison. There are a lot of communities who don't even have access to simple meals, when they get pregnant. Yet they create healthy babies. So if we just understand that life depends upon how you're aligning with nature. It doesn't depend upon how you're protecting yourself with your mind. Because life is never one-to-one. There are a lot of symbiotic processes which is going on. You're staying and your husband catches a cold. He comes and sneezes. If your body, reacts to it in a favorable way, your child will develop that immediately. A lot of time, what happens when the child goes into the body, when in a positive blood group woman, if a negative child is formed, it starts creating antibodies towards the child. Sometimes it happens. So, life is not that easy to be understood in terms of calories, vitamins and supplements. You have to understand that it coexists with everything around you. There are things which we can see, there are things which we cannot see. The whole quotient of Vedic science is that how much you can adapt and coexist. It is never that how much you can survive yourself with so many dangers, because dangers are apparently changing. Today we have this virus, tomorrow there will be another virus. We are doing too much of sanitizations. You are washing your hands 20 seconds, 30 seconds. But along with it, you are also washing away favorable bacteria and viruses. There was a time in Norway, people used to do it too much times and they started developing lupus. See, today the infection rate is less where people are more exposed to viruses. Infection rate is more where people are more sanitized. So these things, if you start understanding, we think that during birthing it is not in your hands. You have to develop your immunity. You have to make peace with nature. You have to eat food as per your environment. You have to eat it on time, and only then because see, if the child wants to have any kind of a protection, it is going to come within you. It is not going to come outside you. You cannot protect anyone if abortion is happening. You can't do anything. Only within you can protect it. And there lies the portion that whenever we give advice to women during this who are under stress and trauma, we have to make these comparisons and make them understand and see the light.
Hi, I'd like to ask something else in regards to the time between when a woman is ready to give birth and she's actually going to give birth or hopefully give birth. So what I've noticed at this time is that several women have an extremely high level of stress, which, many know that basic physiology, if you have too much stress, you're not going to let your baby out. What would you suggest with that stress that women are feeling? Because I understand they want to protect their baby and they don't want to let their baby out. But what would you recommend? They don't want to let their baby out because they fear for their child, they fear for themselves. But obviously the baby does have to come out. So what would you recommend in those situations for those moms who are at this time right now ready to give birth?
Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, you're asking me that a woman is ready to give birth, the child is going to come out, but they don't want to give birth because they feel if the child comes out, it will be harmful for them. Is it right? That is what you're asking?
What was that last, that the child will feel what?
No, if the child comes out into the world, it will be harmful for the child. Therefore, they don't want to give birth. They want to keep that child back again. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
See, now this is, again, as I said, it again comes from the layer of the same answer which I gave to Jiaji a few minutes back, that if the child stays inside, it is anyways going to die. Because the fluids are going to get sucked up, amniotic fluid is going to get sucked up, it is going to be a meconium baby. And eventually, if you keep it there, the mother is also going to die. So life has been already created. If it had to die, it had to die in the first month, second month, third month, fourth month, fifth month. There were so many chances, so many things which would have happened, but it has survived. So because it has survived, the moment it comes out, there are more chances that it will be on its own. So this is something I again ask that, you can start preparing someone from the time they come and visit you, because you start understanding these tendencies. In today's world, as I said, before I just made a statement that a lot of women get depressed when they get a baby. A lot of women also nowadays develop an aversion when they give birth. They don't want to see their baby. They feel it is too much of stress. So some women who go into the fatigue of childbirth, and maybe they lose some body shape. After a period of time, they develop an aversion. They feel, because of the child, I have lost something in my life. I've seen all these cases come to me. I've talked with a lot of people. So that is something which comes right from the start when you want to become a mother or not. A lot of women go into marriages on something and suddenly birthing occurs, conception occurs, and they go into a dilemma thinking, should I keep it, should I not keep it? It is a very moral dilemma. So anytime a woman comes into menses, anytime a woman comes into her own powers, she should start thinking on this fact that conception is a reality, whether we want to go through it or not. Once you get conceived, then eventually, with whomsoever they are talking in a modern world, they should start thinking about it. And the question you are asking is very specific. It's very difficult to answer this, but I always feel a greater evil might always subside a lesser evil. So what can happen is something, if such people are started, if you start telling them, counseling them right from the 8th month, 9th month, their quotient changes to let the baby come out and then I'll take a chance rather than it living inside. So maybe that is in a nutshell. I can tell you the answers. There is no specific thing which you can counsel them with. But if we can understand these tendencies right in the early stages, that how protective a women are becoming about their babies, which is a layered question on what Jiaji asked a few minutes back. How I can protect my baby. It comes in that sequence. So those questions, if you can ask them, if you can tell them that it has survived so much of trauma anyways, so there are fair chances that it will have a great life moment it comes out.
I have a question. Why some babies are born with leg deformity or curved foot, or basically problems with the legs?
Medically, I can say it is a genetic issue. It is a hereditary issue. It is a genetic issue. There are some gene expressions which are, because of which, as you're talking about a Down syndrome or the lapse ankle, those this. Now, if you ask why it happens, modern medicine will say it happens because of genetic issues. Vedic medicine says it happens because of karmic issues. Because, like, why a blind child is born to an absolutely normal people? There is no answer for it. So the answer in modern medicine, it just happens because that it happened in the development process. But that is the reason why in earlier times, this Jyotish was done or Gotra was done, additional things were done, just to prevent this kind of, gene expressions. In Charak, there is a entire chapter dedicated to it, which doesn't speak directly. It speaks in a very indirect manner called as a Atul Gotriya Adhyay. It talks about this kind of epigenetics and why the time of conception, the day of conception, the thing which I introduced my lecture with, of how good the seed is, those things are very important. Of course, in Vedas, Bijas dosh means dosh which comes out of the seed problem, those dosh, everything is given. But how exactly can we prevent it? How exactly can we foresee it? Those things were also given. So after doing all the things, still if you get it, you can say, okay, fine, we tried our best. But the issue occurs most of the time that because these things is not planned, because we do not know the genealogy, we do not know the gene expressions, the sexual fluids mismatch, most of the time gene expression occurs in certain people. It is not a definitive, but it is seen, it is mentioned, and that is the reason why Vedic conception, which comes on a much algorithmic scale, is much more important to take into account. So much of emphasis is given on childbirth, not after the conception, but right before the conception. Right when marriages occurs, unions occur, different kind of marriages are given, different kinds of lunar asterisms are given. So what exactly is saying? It is understanding the individual gene map of a person. It is giving you a complete foresight of what might happen if sexual fluids are mixed. Again, it again depends upon the time. In Vedic conception, it is said that first 3 days, the 6th day, the 13th day, and the 15th day, you should not have intercourse. So there are certain thought processes behind it. Now, earlier times, a lot of people were exposed to sunlight and moonlight. Nowadays, we stay in very confined environments. We have an AC, we have a heater. So all these environmental factors also help in gene expression. There might be a gene, and whether it expresses or not is not a surety. So everybody, and you can see nowadays these genetic problems, these problems are on a rise. Most of the people have children which have this kind of an issues. There might be an autoimmune issues, there might be some kind of different developmental issues, delayed development is on a rise. Women with bicornuate uterus, not fully developed uterus is on a rise. So these all are in this gene expression terms where we are not planning it properly. And this was not only confined to the rich people. There was everything mentioned for all kind of people in whatever methods they could do. So these are the two options I can tell you. On the first option, it is the genetic issues. You do a test in the antenatal care, the double marker, the triple marker test. The chances of getting a genetic problem are confined. If you still want to go ahead, you do an amniocentesis, take out the fluid from little bit of fluid, amniotic fluid, and test it. You'll get to know, and then you get a chance to decide whether you want to drop the baby or keep it. So that is a diagnostic value, but that is not something which everybody agrees with. 5 months you have a baby and there is a chance, are you going to drop it? So see, from modern medicine, it comes quality of life, quantity of life. Vedic medicine says that if you want to have a progeny, it should be qualitative. There is no point in quantitative progeny.
I think Dr. Sumit, what you just said about having the Vedic perspective focusing on the qualitative factor is really important to focus on, because when you say it's not just about the birth process, doesn't just start when the egg and the sperm meet and the conception happens, but the why factor, or possibly, right, where coupled, whatever that looks like, the form, it's like, why are we having this child, right? And that's where actually this journey starts, right? Even at the thought level of why are we having this child, which then impacts the foundation of the child. One of the things I feel so amazing and awesome about what the Vedas provide us, which I often sometimes feel is missing from, or any traditional medicine, but from maybe the quote unquote Western model, is that the focus is on this unborn child and its life in so many ways. And versus, I feel like Lama's classes sometimes, or even yoga and things, how it's perceived, it tends to have a focus more for the mother versus the unborn child. And I don't know if that's, in your perspective, is that true? Because that's the feeling I get is with our Vedas or any traditional medicine. There's and even in the Mexican tradition or anywhere around the world, so much is about this unborn child. How are we preparing it for life, right? It's subconscious in different ways. So can you comment a little bit about how the focus is on maybe this unborn child through various practices? Because there's nothing random about Garbhani Paricharya or Garbha Sanskars or any of the different practices that are shared.
Question here lies from the point you made of why do you want a baby. See, today having a baby becomes a mental need. You're married, you're doing financially, there are people around you, they feel that you're incomplete without a baby. Now in Vedic sciences, this is very important thing. They say that you cannot plan for a baby. when you're sexually highly active, after marriage, when you're orgasmically active, through it, with a natural process of attraction, what happens will create a good baby. Now, I can give you the parallels out of it. A lot of people after marriage or into certain relationship plan for a baby. That time they are not sexually focusing on enjoyment, they are focusing on the baby. So fertility doesn't occur. Then you do this IUI, you do IVF, you do a lot of things, and that puts a lot of stress. You want to create a baby. After you create a baby, then you're completely stressed up that whether it will survive or not. After that, you'll think whether it will have any disorders or not. This leads to, again, this kind of a traumatic experience. No, we require CRISPR babies. We want to gene edit the babies so that we get designer babies, we get disease-free babies. But I made a point in a lot of my lectures that how will you prepare a CRISPR baby? Probably if there was a CRISPR baby 1 year back, how would have protected it against coronavirus? You cannot protect a baby against things which you don't know. And here lies the question to your answer. It says that if a baby occurs through mutual union of a man and a woman, which is like a basic, see, when there was no marriage, there was nothing, progeny or reproduction occurred through natural selections, like a woman is in heat, her body language, everything changes. Like you see a tiger, you see a lioness, when they are in heat, they will go across the alpha male. The moment they are pregnant, they won't look at them, because now the work is done. Reproduction goes into phase and they have to protect it. In humans, it is not different because we have got a little bit of intelligence, we create society, we have created certain laws, it is fine. But if a baby is not occurring through these natural processes, and again I come back, when will you have a natural sperm, a natural quality of egg? Only when those hormonal responses are proper. An egg will be formed if your ovaries, your uterus is functional. If brain is putting stress on the thyroid to create those eggs, that is not going to be a qualitative egg. Similarly happens with the sperm. Even if you take any kind of an aphrodisiac, if that body is not good enough, it is not going to create a qualitative sperm. Quantitatively, it will be there. So once this progeny occurs without any stress, your enjoy, and progeny occurs, like earlier time there was a grahastha, then what happens is that everything flows because you want the best. Then the Garbhini Paricharya, what you are talking, monthly advice comes into full. Now, again, I'll go back to the question, you make a baby happen. You take some clomiphene citrate, you take some FSH, LH, you make a baby happen. That baby has not happened due to qualitative egg and qualitative sperm. So even if it has got fertilized and you give it the Garbhini Paricharya, it is not going to affect that much. So in Shastra, it has been given that little bit of Ayurveda say that the Shukra Dhatu, what is there, it is in your entire body. But what comes out as Retas, what comes out as Virya is different. It happens through the friction. It happens through when heat and air increases into your body. Similarly, the women has been given most importance because it is her egg which selects the sperm. Earlier time it was said no, it is a Y chromosome. But if you see the normal nowadays researches, it has said that it is the egg which selects which sperm should fertilize it. So if you're not getting that primary follicle proper, if it is not qualitative, if it is a little bit weak, and the sperm is a little bit weak, then that conception is going to be weak. And these subtle things were completely mentioned, they're completely taught through oral processes from Vedic lineages. The problem is that because Vedas were orally transmitted, again I put it was a sound to sound transmission. Word to sound transmission becomes a little bit difficult to understand. We get too much engrossed with the processes, we get too much engrossed with the herbs. We feel that if we use herbs, then it is a natural. If we use chemical, it is bad. No. Even if you do Garbhini Paricharya with modern supplements like vitamin D, with folic acid, but if all these algorithms are proper, it will still be a better option than taking some herbs, concoctions, medicated them with milk and giving them month by month. So the process is important. Even if you're doing birthing, by proper sterilization methods, it is still the same. In earlier times, after giving birth, women's uteruses used to prolapse. So what they used to do, they used to put oil, put it inside and put a coconut shell inside. It is the same process. Today they put sterilized rings inside to fix. A lot of women used to forget about it and they used to get massive infections. There was this case documented that a coconut shell was removed after 30 years because the woman was getting a lot of infection. They had forgot about it. The point I'm here trying to make that this processes, if you see, these algorithms of, if you see, have not changed. Today also, we are taking medications to increase sperm count. You are taking medications like metformin to secrete follicles because you have got polycystic ovarian syndromes. You are taking thyroid supplements. Everything is given so that hormonal response is there, that egg forms. But that is not going to lead to strong progeny. So this quotient was very important, that when you are highly orgasmic at a particular time, those hormonal complexes what you have, which create that qualitative sperm, cannot be matched with chemical responses what you take. So the point is that if the baby occurs, you have to totally prepare. When you get into conjunction with someone, either it be marriage, live-in, whatever. So you have to be prepared when you become homologous with someone, and in that process, if you get a baby, you might fall out of love of your partner after some time. You might leave him. But in that process, where that baby was created, was it with complete factors what I've said? That baby will have more chances of surviving. And if you have social moral conundrums and you try to create a baby, you will always go into problems, which you see in today's modern world with infertility, problems in this. And this then leads to a lot of things. Your uterus becomes plastic, you get birthing issues. A lot of women have to go through C-sections. Uteruses become small, prolapse is not happening, women get fatigued. They want to do natural this, but eventually they give up. So, this all things contribute. So this has been put in a very subtle way. Of course, we don't have a lot of documentation because a lot of treatises have lost to time. A little bit of Kashyap Sahita we have, a little bit of Vagbhat we have, which are not complete. But eventually, if those rules in Sutrasthana, if you understand, these all things have been mentioned. And here lies a little bit of answer to your question, that this concept, if it's been counseled with a lot of people who want to start a family, why do you want to start a family, or does the family starts because it was a generic issue? A lot of people get married and suddenly progeny occurs. Then they say, no, it is too early. Then they remove the baby. After that, they want to plan the baby and nothing happens. No baby is formed. So this is also, we have seen these cases also. And those things we should be a pointers as an answer to your question.
Community of birthing women. And I'm curious, so many of my women who I meet have birth trauma, they've been raped, their babies are products of rapes and things like that. So I'm always concerned about how to soothe them, their mentality, because the mother's body is the environment of this baby growing. Can you speak to that, doctor?
I understand where you're coming from. And again, the answer, a little bit I've shared this. See, process of conception is a very technical algorithmic process. How the conception has come through, that may be traumatic. So for example, if I take a little bit of liberty with being blunt, the act of sexual intercourse, however it might come, is required for conception. Now, when this birth comes, this baby comes, or whatever it is growing, can they see, first of all, are they comfortable with it? A lot of women say that, no, I don't want to keep it because what is the fault of the baby? Some people have some issues with letting the baby go. So I think this technical aspect, algorithmic aspect, and social moral aspect, somewhere in counseling must be bluntly put forward. I know it is difficult what I'm saying and where you're coming from, but then what happens is that eventually if that baby is going to become a social moral burden to himself, herself, and the mother, it is of no use. So these are certain concepts which somebody has to, to put forth if they have a choice. In certain communities, this choice is not there. Because I've worked with people from different communities, so without pointing out, I know in certain communities, this choice is not there. So again, in the cycle of nature, what more can you do about it? Because when we go outside Earth, there is nothing called as good and bad. Everything is now, the disease doesn't select anyone. Accidents do not select anyone specifically. They just happen. The whole concept when some people were doing here, you told they are from yoga, I see is how much internally at peace you are in cutting out the chaos. I always say that, some people can get offended with certain things what people tell them. It doesn't let them concentrate. Some people get offended when somebody makes an opinion about themselves. Now it is that they are letting it affect themselves, and therefore their work and their life is getting stagnated. Now I'm not going to compare those things with a crime like rape. But here, because you're talking about birth, that birthing is already there, that child is already there. What is the first question? Do they have a choice or do they do not have a choice? When they have a choice, it puts more burden, because should they keep it, should they not keep it? Do they like the motherhood, but they do not like where it is coming from? So somewhere that counseling should be done outside the boundaries of compassion. That is a hard question everybody should ask themselves. I know it is a little bit difficult, but if I'll speak for myself, I've seen such cases, so I'm telling you, that is the first blunt question I ask. That why are you keeping the baby? Just because you feel that life is not there, it is just a blip. There's no guarantee till 4 months it is going to stay there. But are you going to carry that trauma till 9 months, and after that, if you get that feeling that I don't want it, then it is going to be very, very irresponsible. So first you have to accept whether that act is troubling you more than your own conscious of keeping the baby or not. If that act is not troubling you, why the baby is there, then there is no quotient about it. Because then you should be at that peace to fight the environment. But if you cannot, but I see that a lot of people do not pose these blunt questions at the right time. We give them a lot of compassion, we give them a lot of moral high ground, we justify that no, it is fine. If you feel you have to keep the baby, you will find support in the environment, you will find like-minded people who will support your decision. But internally, we know that if that baby is within, how we are looking at the environment around us. Are we finding that peace? Are we finding that stability, that no, I can carry this? And this quotient comes from a lot of issues. In earlier times in India, there was untouchability. I'm giving you a very different example. So if somebody from that place went into a higher education system, he had to first balance his chaos that I have to stop thinking if I'm accepted or not. I'm enjoying the process of what I'm doing. If you started thinking, I'm going into a place where I'm not accepted, people are not going to touch me, they are going to put me at a separate table, I'm going to get castigated, then that process is not going to be enjoyable. It is going to be filled with rage. No knowledge is coming through. And I'm just giving you a parallel example. The stigma can be anything. It could be come from a physical trauma, a mental trauma, a social trauma. Can you maintain peace within the chaos? And this is what I always tell to few cases who have come to me and asked for counsel. So I tell, if you cannot, then just don't even think, just get free of it. You don't want another trauma in your life. If you feel that no, that is past, that is a blip which is done to me, it has got nothing to do with this, I'm enjoying this birthing process, then forget from where it has come from. Because creation is happening within you and you have to carry forward. And I think somewhere if we can give this parallels at the right time, most of the time these issues get resolved. Apart from that, you can't do much.
I understood that there are many factors involved while a birth, but how much there's influence of planets, like as you mentioned, Jyotish and Veda and Karma. But
See, most times when we talk about Jyotish, we think about planets and everything. But you have to understand, when we talk about Graha, the word Graha, it is something which is invisible to us. Most of the times you cannot see the planets, apart from if you really look into the sky, right? Venus, Earth, if you know. So Graha can be anything. They can be microbes. They can be viruses. There is a specific term in Sanskrit called as Bala Graha. So diseases which are not formed inside the body, but diseases which are formed due to external factors. So they say Bala Graha. So a lot of time people say Graha means Jyotish. It is not Jyotish. It is something which you cannot see, which is something floating in the air due to dynamism which is happening in the atmosphere around it. And of course, planetary movements affect it. I'm not saying planetary movements not affected. So if somebody can calculate it from that point of view, fine. But that there is something in the atmospheric place which we cannot see, but which are affecting. It's called as graha. Graha means which comes, there is a word in Sanskrit called as grahan. When you grasp someone, when the moon grasps the sun, sun grasps the moon, eclipse what you call it. So this etymological differences have to be understood. So Jyotish definitely plays a role in it if you can know the moment when the conception occurs. Now it is very difficult to find out. How can you find out the moment the conception of the life form starts? Some people will say after 3 months, some people will say at the moment the sperm and the ovum goes through. Because it is that light, it is that micro derivative affliction which is happening on your ever-growing body. If you a little bit learn science and all, there is something called a surface area. Sometimes light is concentrated on a small surface area. But when that surface area is increasing, how much ambient light you are going to absorb? Because each surface area contains conglomeration of cells. In each cell, there is some kind of a life force going on. So if that is affected by these 4 forces, which I always say, gravitational force, electromagnetic force, weak and strong nuclear force, which is either trying to bring you together or throw you apart. So this also acts on an integrative form with the planets around you, which are focusing on the Earth. So earlier times, this Jyotish, what you say, or the light system was understood from that point of view of how these movements, how these forces within heavenly bodies, within you, with you as a point, are affecting the hormonal systems into your body, affecting the environment around you. What kind of decisions are you going to take? What kind of macro changes are happening around you which will affect your microsystems? Because when a change occurs, like right now there is this virus going on, but everybody is reacting to it in a different way. Can we say that no, everybody will react in the same way? No. Why this? So the virus is come, you can say there is some atmospheric change, whatever it is there. The graha is there, which you cannot see. But how individually you are reacting to it depends upon how your constitutional behavior is there, how you are made up, how these cells in synchronization are secreting the hormones at a right time. So, that is little bit intricate thing to understand unless and until we studied very mathematics. And therefore, Jyotish Shastra was understood right from breath. And if you can count the first breath till the last breath, you can know these calculations. But this goes into a little bit different deviations of birth and nadis, So I don't want to comment much on it. But just to answer your question, so it definitely makes a difference, but not in a way it is portrayed. Not in a way people say, okay, now this dasha is going on, so this is going to happen to you. There is no guarantee in it. But you can accurately project it, predict it, if you can reverse calculate your breath. If by looking at someone you know how many breaths are there in the day, how much you can reverse calculate it. This science was there. This mathematical science was there, which was used earlier. It's still passed on to certain traditions. But then you have to study it in that particular way, and you can only know it if your body is stable enough to match your own breaths. If you're unstable, then again this thing is not good. And similarly, it happens in children. They say that the moment a child is born, his breath is counted. From there, certain astrologers to know how much diseases he is going to get, what kind of collapse he is going to get in his lungs, how much day he is going to survive. If he gets fever, how many days it is going to happen. So this was calculated. The moment the child was born, this was cut. The moment he cried. But then that comes on calculations, right? How many breaths the mother is taking to deliver the child. So, earlier time there was a astrologer who used to always stay, when the birthing process was there. If you know the tradition, if you go back into history. So those things are not passed on. But if those things are calculated, you can definitely calculate a lot of things. And you can make very accurate predictions of how exactly that child is going to progress from birth till maturity.
I have a question about when the soul merges with the baby's body. At what point during gestation that happens?
Can you repeat the question?
At what point does the soul, the baby, when does the soul merge with the body?
So when we say soul, there is, it is a little bit of a dynamic concept, because there is no soul, like what we call as Atma and Sattva, they are this encapsulating forces. We start the start the resonance into your system. See, life and any creation is resonance. If you see, the Vedas came from sound. Sound is resonance. When something breaks apart or joins, there is a resonance. That resonance starts the force. When that resonance starts the force, then eventually intellectual life develops, and we say that whatever the karmic doshas are there are get into it. So there is no definitive point when it enters, when the resonance starts. If you say heartbeat is life, then a lot of people say heartbeat develops after 2 months, or after 12 weeks, 8 weeks. Before that, it is not visible. But is it not visible? We see there is a gestational sac. If you do the sonography, you'll say there is a gestational sac, but we don't know if it is viable or not. So when exactly it enters? What exactly do we mean by life and animation? So Shastra says that this animation starts the moment the sperm enters the ovum, because everything enters into it. Is that resonance strong enough to create derivative resonances? Because everything that separates after that, mitosis occurs, cell revolution happens with resonance. That nada might not be audible to you, our human ears, but it is there. What is sonography? You are putting in sound waves and you are getting something back. So understand that through sound, this thing starts happening. This resonance, when it starts developing in a very algorithmic process, the concept of life occurs. And this is how it is calculated in Vedic sciences also. If you talk about sattva, if you talk about intelligent life, of how exactly we can get the resonance, you can say it enters in 3rd month, it enters in 2nd month, it enters in 1st month. Some people will say the moment you cut the umbilical cord, it happens. A lot of people say that the moment the child goes through the vaginal canal, he forgets all his previous karmas. Then how would you explain people who come out of C-section? They are not going through the vaginal canal. So we have to understand that there is a word-to-word translation of certain things, and there is a Buddhartha, what we say, that how exactly you algorithmically understand things. So the concept of soul is very much different from the concept of Atman. We say consciousness. Consciousness is the first thing of knowing that I have manifested. That occurs at the first time the bang occurs. Its awareness might come after a period of time. Because the moment the conception occurs, the mother's nadi, the Garbha nadi, starts pulsating 2 times. A lot of time there were people who used to just check the the nadi below the navel, or just touch the navel and understand that you have got conception. Because the moment it comes, it doubles. The heart rate doubles. And that is the time you can say, what I say, the Atman and the Sattva goes inside. I won't correlate it with the word soul, but from my point of view, I'm trying to give you this example. The concept of soul is different in different beliefs, so I don't want to comment on it.
I have another question if no one else does. When, at what point, for someone who is planning or, trying to conceive, they might have a clear sense of when that conception happened. For somebody who didn't or wasn't planning, like when can you sort of trace back that conception? I'm curious about the Jyotish part of it. And how, what is that conception? Is the conception different Jyotish-wise than the birth?
A lot of people do natal charts and they take the time the person is born, or sometimes when the umbilical cord is cut, or the first time he speaks. So again, I come back to the point, it's what you constitute as independent life. So Jyotish is always understood that, okay, now he has become independent. You cut the cord, he's independent. But no, he's not cried. So the moment the air goes inside, he's independent. So the concept here starts is, when does independent life starts? And we understand that in your body, the child itself is not independent, right? You are made up of conglomeration of millions of cells. Some cell is dying today, some cell is as good as one day, some cell is leaving its spark. So life, you are made up of individual life cells. As a conglomeration, you are seeing yourself as an animation. So Jyotish also tells you the same thing, that life happens in small, minute points. So let us say two people are sitting together at one place. Okay. So we'll say from a far off distance, we'll say, okay, there is no point, they're sitting in one place. But from an individual point of view, you still have your unique point in space. You know, if you have to really calculate, it could be that micro unit where you're separate from someone. That can be calculated. And Jyotish, what we say, calculates that finite space of light, that one speck of light, which puts on that first identifiable point, what we call as manifestation. Beyond that, there is no manifestation. So there is no difference in Jyotish point or individual point. It is just that the moment that bang occurs, that resonance is created, that light is created, the calculation starts. It is a derivative form of a bigger animation. You know, like if you separate some clay from clay and you start create something out of it, it is not separate from the clay. You have still made it from the same clay. But the moment that thought occurs that you want to separate it, animation starts. So the moment you decide that you want to conceive, animation starts. Let us say that during that conception or intercourse process, the nadis are the same with complete involvement, you know, the mixing of sexual fluids happen. The moment that egg brings it and it opens up, Jyotish starts. So it is very difficult to quantify why exactly we are calculating. The first part which I said we are calculating is to understand how much time that child will live. That is done. It is irrespective of what kind of quality that child is going to get. Because there in yogic parts, how many breaths are there in every person is calculated. So, you know, therefore the applications are manifold. We are talking about a very material Jyotish where we think, okay, what kind of a money is going to get, what kind of health is going to get. But health is not disease. You know, you are already diseased. Health is that every cell of your body performing to its fullest. And if you are very logical, we know it is not. So that things cannot be calculated. We take disease, something which is stagnated us mentally, physically or spiritually. But on a very functional level, that is not the case. And therefore, when we talk about Jyotish, you know, this kind of things are very much important to notify that, you know, when that first speck of light happens on separation, Jyotish calculation starts. Now, can you reverse trace it the moment the child is born? Or you can reverse trace it when the umbilical cord is cut? Or you can reverse trace it the moment your heartbeat is formed? Or you can reverse trace it the moment you can feel the extra pulsation in your garbhanad? You know, that goes into education, that goes into calculations, which a lot of people have to train themselves in these concepts, which are not written anywhere. They are passed on from tradition to tradition, and in yogic lineages, in Vedic lineages, in a particular way. So I think that is what something I can tell you on a very superficial level, but exactly why this requirement is there that each individual should decide.
So that each individual should be what?
You should decide, you know, why exactly this calculation is required. So that is what I said. If you ask from a very education point of view, this is how it is calculated. It is only calculated to understand how many breaths are allocated to this particular life form. And when you talk about breaths, I'm talking about the word prana. I'm using breath just as a translation. Breath is not prana. So it is just how much vitality is there in this person, how much we can calculate. And this is a very algorithmic process. This is not a random process. These have been calculated. Everything has been put in relation to every life form and to relation to cosmos. But that will go into a completely different kind of a science, you know, where I don't want to, you know, put in more concepts. But just because you asked about Jyotish, I'm just giving you the correlation.
Okay. And you're talking that you understand how many breaths someone will take based on conception?
Yeah, you can. I'm not talking about breaths. I'm talking about the word prana, which is vitality.
Fun. Yeah.
Breath is different. Yeah.
From conception.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
I think Dr. Sumit, if you can, I think the point about breath versus prana is very, very critical to understand, especially, I mean, for any holistic practitioner, but can you go a little bit deeper in that?
I hope I don't go away from the subject of why this.
Well, everything's interconnected, right? So, because we're talking about vitality here, and the vitality of the fetus and the family unit and then the planet.
See, pran is something which you take inside, pran vayu, when we say you're taking that vayu, that air which you're breathing, you're taking something inside. You can say it's oxygen, nitrogen, whatever. So that perfect mixture which makes your system run is called pran. It is like a fuel, which is, that fuel which is there, which after you start the engine, because of the motion of the engine, it is circulated everywhere. Now, even if the circulation is there, if the fuel is not reaching the engine, you are going to stutter. So even if breath is there, but there is no pran into the system, your candle is going to blow. So there are subtle differences between pran and breath. So with breath, with normalization of breath, what you do in yogic things, you stabilize your body with proper asana, you take breath, you do a diet to keep your systems open. You are helping that breath circulate this pran in each and every cell of your body. But even if you do proper breathing, but if your body is not open, it is stagnated, you are not sitting properly, how much you breathe, you still are going to get diseased. So this is the difference between pran and breath. A child might breathe, but if there is no pran, after some time, he will pass off. Got it? No, the breathing will be there. Of course, it will be a very synchronized effort. You will say, okay, yes, left, but no. Because if you see yogic sciences, there are 10 types of vayu. If you do not even leave you after you die. So that thing what you're taking inside, that first consciousness, that first resonance which happens is called as pran. It gets divided, that much is allocated, that much fuel is allocated to you over a period of time, inside you and outside you, and it gets mismatched. Internally, when you start burning that fuel, due to your, whatever kind of activities you do in terms of eating or whatever, eventually the outside and the inside, there is a mismatch. There is specifically allocated to every plexus is how much they are. That we go into, something of a different kind of a lineage, so I don't want to go there. But this is a subtle difference between pran and breath. So we say vital breath. So the vital is pran, breath is different.
I think this distinction, the same metaphor applies to this, goes back to the qualitative, right? So what we find in the birth world, at least here, is I come across a lot of conversation where they're like, oh, Ayurveda, I'm giving my client shatavari and ashwagandha. But here the understanding is not there that you can have the herb, but they may not be able to get benefit from this herb, or may not be the right fit for the client depending on what else is happening. And so what would you share where, since there are a lot of yoga and birth workers on the call, we're in a paradigm of where the ancient wisdoms and the modern sciences, right, are, that, as you say, the algorithms can be the same. But what can support birth workers that may not have to maybe help fill in these missing gaps in their understanding and practice better? Like what?
See, this again comes from the same point, is that what exactly, birth workers or midwives, what happened is that in earlier times, most of the healers were males. So during birthing, they were not allowed. It was not like in the society that they were allowed. So certain women who already were assisting or something, the midwife, the dai system started going into the Indian system. We call it as dai or midwife. The first women doctor of India, in free India, was Dr. Anandibai Joshi, and her PhD thesis was on birthing. If you get a hang of those theses, birthing in Hindu India, that was his thesis. So there are a lot of things were documented, which few things I put shadow. The whole concept here is, what exactly are you assisting? You're assisting a woman in going through a proper labor, because a lot of women pass fecals, pass urine. So earlier when guys used to come, they used to prepare this bricks on which the women were said to squat, urine. Then slowly warm water was there, certain massage was done on the perineum area so that, vayu goes away. Earlier times, this dye started their work from 4th month, 5th month, 6th month, advocating on diet, advocating on what kind of food they should be eating, what kind of exercises they should be doing, like sweeping the floor so that the pelvic muscles become strong. So, when this students started incorporated with a proper algorithmic knowledge of what you are trying to achieve, then it becomes very easy. It doesn't mean that you're giving a herb for certain relaxation. You're getting this, okay, don't take a chemical, take a herb. That is not what is intended. The dai also knew what kind of a breast milk the mother is secreting. She could look and she could understand. If a child is producing more fecus and urine, then the milk is sweet. If the child is getting flatulence, the milk is astringent. If there is a oil-colored milk that a child is taking, then he'll have very good immunity. If it is a ghee-colored milk he's taking, then he will have separate thing. If it is a smoky milk, it will be separate. So what is a good kind of a milk? If the milk is not bad, what are its signs? What kind of herbs I have to give for proper lactation? In earlier times, it was said that the child is not fed on the mother's milk for 3 days. With modern medicine, they said you should start feeding it on the first day because the first milk with colostrum is very this. So earlier doctors used to give some injections. The doctors to make that milk a little bit transparent. So this wisdom came over a period of time. When to cut the umbilical cord. A lot of people nowadays want to do home birthing. So they wait till the placenta comes out. Most of the time after the placenta comes out, the bleeding is pretty less. Why? Because there is swelling in the uterus. So a lot of certain midwives who do not know this, they do the massage and then what happens? Internal hemorrhage occurs. So there are side things to it. So the point I'm trying to make here is that how much of this entire process, the science of a birthing woman, not from a modern point of view, of course you require some modern anatomical, but from a holistic point of view, from the environmental point of view, you can educate yourself. What kind of a changes a woman is going through, what are her food habits, what kind of a diseases she is getting during her time. So the midwife has to prepare and be educated. When the time comes, you have to just assist in birthing. How exactly your time you are going to wait till the placenta comes out? What happens if the placenta doesn't come out? What happens if the uterus prolapse occurs? When will you cut the placenta? Where will you cut it? There are a lot of things which we understand. After that, a lot of women, if the placenta is not properly out, you get this peripheral disorders. Women start getting fevers, cross infections, viral infections. When will the breast milk secrete? Earlier times in royal houses, queens did not want to disfigure their body. So they had this lactating midwives also, who used to breastfeed the children. So this entire thing in India, I'm talking about India, the dye system, I'm not talking about people around the world. This developed from a structured system over a period of time. In Charak Sahita and Sushruta Sahita, as I said, there was a separate Sutika Graha. It was said that there has to be a separate room, well aerated, everything. But poor people or some people could not afford it. So now what happened is that room specifics have gone. There is no ventilation. People just put fumigation inside a pregnant, a woman after birthing and cover her with blankets. Oils and dust gets mixed, raises infection. So this nuances also need to be studied of how exactly the room should be, how ventilated it should be. Earlier times during the entire process, a lamp was lit with camphor. Why? To prevent viral infections. Nowadays we are not fumigating it. We are not sterilizing it. We are putting it in an AC environment, in a comfortable environment for birthing. How much varied it is. So when we talk about a holistic midwife, this entire process right from conception, to be quite frank, first month, second month, to knowing your client, to assisting them, to preparing them for labor, through labor to understanding the complications, everything should be studied and then supplemented with herbs if required. It doesn't matter you need to use herbs. You can use chemicals also. Everything works on the doshas. Whatever you feel is good enough in that point. If the breast milk is of good quality, even if you just give, as I told you, if you just give, okay, now your child is born, I'm giving you medicine because your breast milk will increase. If the breast milk is proper, qualitative, you don't require to give anything. But if unnecessary, if you give herbs, it is going to cause insulin problems in the child. So, this all things we have to understand. And today, the information is getting too comparative. We are getting too many information. So, we try to align with modern, like Midwife is also there, they try to align with modern concepts. And somewhere, and just try to replace modern supplements with herbs. And there lies the problem, that the effect is not seen in long term. So, this all things a Dai was educated in, a midwife was educated in. Why? Because the healer was not allowed to go and see a woman.
So we've spoken a lot around concepts and things. And so when you speak about preparation, maybe first, if you can make it your perspective on what Garbha Parichayas are and then what Garbha Sanskaras are. Especially around here, like there's a lot of rituals that happen, but the rituals, I feel, are they actually connected with deeper education, or is it just this ceremonial process, right? Well, Garbha Sanskars are kind of rites of passages in some way, but it's not just about a ceremony. And so what is the difference, or your perspective on what Garbhani Parichayas are and what Garbha Sanskars are, and what are some of those practices that maybe some of the birth workers on this call would be helpful?
Garbha Sanskar is I'll say a very scattered term. If you ask me if there are any documented Garbha Sanskaras, I'll say yes and no. Because it's not something which is like documented. It is a very traditional thing, If I'm chanting a mantra during certain things, it is a very traditional thing. A person in the West is not going to know it. Garbhani Parichaya is a very documented thing. It is said that how your child is in the first month, in the second month. So they say in the first month, give him diet which is made up of fluids. In my practice, I tell them to be maximum on cow's milk or rice water for the first month. In second month, you increase the viscosity because your child's viscosity increases. Third month, fourth month. After fourth month, the child, the garbha becomes steel. Means now he is settled. He is no more a fluid response. Now he has become stable. From that side, slowly, you start adding a little bit of ghee, little bit of rice. Start increasing semi-solid fluids. Till a time comes of birthing, when you start giving a little bit of enemas. Why? Because now you want the lower muscles to relax, gas to pass, no constipation, so that a lower kind of a reflux is started. Then in the 9th month during birthing, whatever the procedures are, you go into a sterilized room, you prepare the hot water, or whatever the modern methodologies you are using. Some people do water birth, some people do some other kind of birth. That is fine. The question then happens that birthing process is like, okay, fine, you are assisting someone with certain kind of procedures, certain kinds of maneuvers. That is very individualistic. So I don't want to put much emphasis on it. After the child is out, what exactly are you? When are you cutting the umbilical cord? So it is said you should not cut very near. You should cut it as far as possible. Preferably, you should cut when completely the placenta is expelled. Now, some people are there who let it shed on its own. They preserve the placenta. They say when it sheds on its own, we'll shed it. We are not going to cut it. Or we are going to just tie it. So that is a new concept. But Vedic sciences says, no, you cut it. Then that placenta, a lot of time in local sciences, they bury it with a little bit of ritual in somewhere under the earth, so that no one else can find it. So those are very individual things which I don't want to put into. Once that child is born, then there are two things. The mother and the child, because child is still dependent on the mother. So initially, if you can't give the breast milk, you want to follow the procedure of 3 days. Feed the child pure, raw, boiled, cool down, cow's milk, spoon by spoon. But nowadays it is not available. So you can make do with something else till the mother, if you want to follow the 3-day rule or 2-day rule. After that, you have to check the mother's milk. A lot of time we say that take a bowl of water and put some milk in it. So it should completely mix. If it is floating or falling down, then it is not good quality. If that is happening, then you have to give the mother some kind of herbs. It could be as simple as fennel, fenugreek. I have mentioned it in that spice book which is there. So these things you can give. Secondly, you have to observe the mother. Is she getting some fever? Is she getting some chills? So has the placenta been out completely? Then you have to give her certain, first 3 days, you have to give her certain hot kind of foods, which is inducing some form of bleeding. Why? Because if any placental remains are there, they are thrown out. Any vayu is there into the body, it is passing out. So what happens? The breasts do not become heavy, they don't hurt. The lactiferous glands open up completely. After 2-3 days, when the bleeding ceases, the child is brought to drink the milk. Then again, I say you have to observe the child, what kind of symptoms he is showing. So these are separate adhyayas given in Kashyap Samhita, right from lactation to a playroom where how a child's psychological development is happening. So if we read this text properly, I know not complete documentation is available, but I always feel that women who want to go into this midwife, they should read the Kashyap Samhita and a little bit of Bhagavad and Charak, where this where it is simplified. All these factors are mentioned. If they can rationalize it with today's modern world, just the rules, not everything what is put there, it becomes easy. And then probably whatever kind of herbs you want to use, you can use it. Some people nowadays create Masinu Masik Kasha, a kada which has to be given, a concoction which has to be given to Garbhini in every month. They prepare tablets. But you have to be very careful. Are we going to use it just because they are prescribed? Or do we know the status of the woman? Is it required for her? So those things are also important, and because it is herbal, it is safe, it is not. You have to understand this algorithmic pathology, how a client is being progressed right from pregnancy towards birth, and what is happening post-pregnancy when the child is delivered, because you have to still take care of the mother for a period of 1 month, 2 months, and slowly ease her and the child into another, another paradigm, whatever follows.
I have a question about encapsulation of placenta. What do you think about that through the traditional practice?
Encapsulation means cutting off?
People tend to, in this country, it's very popular for people to actually dry the placenta, put it in a capsule and feed it to the mother. What is your opinion on that?
I don't know, maybe if it's coming from some traditional practice somewhere, then maybe that would be a better option. But for us, it happens at the moment that placenta is like a connection between the mother's artery to the child, because it is directly fed. The moment that juice in that artery dries up, conception, the birthing occurs, because the mother says, now there is not too much thing left for me to support the child. Till that juice is flowing, that homeostasis is mentioned. There will be perfect amniotic fluid, the child will have perfect motion. The moment that juice, that flow, that nectar has stopped, then it says, no, the time has come for the child to be independent. So the moment it goes, whatever is remaining in the placenta comes out. Of course, you don't have to cut it very quickly. You have to let it settle. What happens that first once that placenta tube comes out, if you have given, you will understand it will be very patent. Eventually it will come down. The moment it comes down, you understand that the juice has been sucked, you clamp it where it is going down. It will be near the tip. And then they cut it off. So this is what it is done. Now some people say, no, it has got a lot of nutrients. It has got, you can encapsulate, you can give it to the mother. Some people keep it till it falls down on its own. I've seen that also. So there I cannot comment on it, because it is something which comes from some kind of a belief. So I don't want to say it is right or wrong. I only speak for what comes from the Vedic sciences, the algorithmic sciences. The moment you become independent, that flow from the mother to the child is stopped. There is no point in keeping it there, unless and until it has sucked all the juice. And that is what it said, that you have to wait so much time just to clamp it. Earlier, doctors used to clamp it quickly. Nowadays, they don't do it. They wait for some time. Today, people also take cord blood from it for stem cell preservation. So, this can give you certain ideas of how exactly it is important. Once it dries up, there is nothing there. There is no pran, there is no vitality which is feeding the placenta. It is on its own. It is neither growing, it is shrinking. So, there is no nutrient which is coming out for anyone. Of course, on a nutritional basis, if somebody is encapsulating it, eating it, that is something which we don't know. Of course, some of that placental remains were earlier also used off the record in certain soft drinks to make it enhancing. So people used to drink it. So I won't name the brand. So it's fine. Maybe it could have some kind of addictive thing. I don't know about it, but that's for the chemist to find out.
I haven't seen that in any of the texts. What I'm really asking is, do you know of a text where it says it's recommended to feed the dead placenta to the mother? I haven't found it. I'd like to know if you have.
So if I can, it is not mentioned in the text, but if you can find out from the animal kingdom, it comes that, when the cat gives birth to her child and the placenta comes out, the cat eats it.
Yeah, but we're not cats.
Yeah. So jungle cats, because that is the time in tantric people who do this occult, they require the cat's placenta for some ritual. So when I had gone into I've seen a lot of cats, jungle cats, they eat their placenta. I don't know about cats in the house because I don't have a cat, but in jungle it is done. So maybe people might have picked it up something from there. I don't know. They have observed in nature that few animals, eat their placenta after they give birth. Some people just bury it inside so no one can find it. In certain occult practices in yoga, this placenta, whenever it is there, it is shared with certain things and kept, and maybe after a period of time, certain rituals are done. But that is, as I said, specific to that tradition, to that practices. We cannot generalize it in us who are not following any discipline. So if it is done with anything is done with a proper discipline, a proper preparation to absorb it. We just cannot pick it up because somebody is doing it. So I wouldn't like to comment on that portion here on an open forum. But if you just wanted some references, say yes, in nature this thing happens. And we have learned from nature, so it's not surprising if somebody has imbibed that practice.
So you don't consider it a form of cannibalism?
No, see, everything is made from 5 elements. Whatever we eat, it is made from 5 elements. So if you see algorithmically, even the shit and urine is made from 5 elements. So it only depends upon our consciousness, what you can absorb and imbibe. Some people will say that we don't want milk, we don't want this. So that, as I said, there is a moral, social outlook towards a particular practice, and there is a scientific, an algorithmic functional practice. As I said, when you go away from Earth, there are no direction. There is no east, west, north, south. Here we make it. So similarly, we are very different people with different thought processes. And that is the reason we are talking on this forum, because holistically, Vedic sciences says that you cannot go out and catalog everything. You have to co-adapt yourself to what is around you. And that depends upon your individuality. Like if I'm telling something here, it might come as an abuse to someone, it might come as a knowledge to someone, it might come, just as something else. That depends upon which school of thought you have come from. If you ask me only from a structural point of view, from a Vedic point of view, from a health point of view, I see if eating that placenta is giving nourishment, if it is getting converted into some kind of nourishment, give it. It could happen that there might be certain societies where there was nothing to eat. After a period of time, placenta might be the only way of nourishment because it was nourishing. So in that, maybe that thing was okay. As I said, we have learned from animals. So cannibalism also started with humans when there were cold environments and people had nothing to eat. We have seen this in certain documentaries where plane had crashed in a certain place and 10, 20 days there was nothing to eat. So see, surviving and eating something and assimilating it can be a survival choice. Eventually that survival choice can become a cult choice. It can become a cult tradition. Who is to point out on it? So for me, if you ask me this question, where it comes from, I'll tell you, okay, it comes from here. Whether I approve of the practice, I say no, because it makes no sense, because even if it is nutritious, there are a lot of other things to do. If you ask me by eating it, does it give any benefit to the mother and the baby, I'll say no. Because whatever the baby has to derive from the placenta is already there. So these are certain questions which everybody should answer, from which school of thought they are coming from and what. Like now I've talked about milk. Now there will be somebody is a vegan, they'll say, no, we don't want to give milk. We don't want to give cow's milk. It is not for them. So that is an individual choice. I can respect it saying, fine, okay, you don't agree with it, don't give it. You can give the substitute. But algorithmically, is it giving a benefit or not? That is a completely different thing.
There was a question about how the past affects the baby. I'm not sure if she's referring to Purva Janma stuff or karma. But whoever asked the question, I'm not sure if you're still on the call. Feel free to ask that.
Maybe, I'm not sure if that's exactly how I said that, but generally, yes, I'm curious how mostly how the way the baby was conceived and the pregnancy itself, how can manifest in the way baby is born and in the way the baby is growing up. But also how the mom's own experience and traumas can influence the labor and birth itself.
We find some interesting references, like if during an intercourse, when the sperm is shed and the mother sneezes, the baby will become blind. Certain things are given. So now these things are given there in certain books, a lot of few things. What happens when you have an intercourse on certain days, if the baby gets fertilized on a 10-day, 14-day, what kind of a baby is born? What kind of things when mother starts eating during the pregnancy, it will, if a mother eats, earlier times if she eats dust, then the king will be born. So these anecdotes are found in a lot of civilizations. In certain many texts in Ayurveda, a lot of these anecdotes are there. If you go through this process of conception, a lot of these anecdotes are given. I'm not remembering much of that, few which I remember, I'm telling you. So what, in a nutshell, it is trying to tell that when you're going in the conception, there is a particular process given of how exactly one should dress, what exactly they should eat, what should be the ceremony. Even that is also given. So a question occurs is that if you prepare well, if you're totally in sync with your partner and you prepare well for the ceremony, then probably there are certain things which you can definitely avoid passing on to the baby. And here comes the answer to your question also, if there is any past trauma, something, some people have got some physical abuse during their childhood. So they are not so open to physical touch, even in a relationship. I've seen it, it becomes difficult, it becomes traumatic. They want to, but they cannot. And here I always feel that this thing, if you are planning for a baby, this thing must, either through yoga, through any other method, through surrender, whatever, hook and crook. If that zone is taken out, if that baby is formed, if you have got this complete orgasmic, lustful, whatever you say, synchronization with your partner, then probably most of these genetic expressions can be stopped. If the trauma is carried, you say, no, I've got over the trauma, but the trauma is still there. You might develop a depression towards birthing. You might develop trauma during birthing. These are psychic impressions which remain with you. So therefore we say, why Garbha Sanskara? The first Sanskara is, not Garbha, the first Sanskara is fertilization, when the child is there, in 16 Sanskaras. Why it is given in one Sanskara? Why only sex is not given? Why conception is given as first Sanskara? Why? Because you have to prepare yourself to bring someone. You are facilitating a soul to live its life by giving him or her a body. So it was understood in a much greater sense. It was understood in a much higher sense. In earlier text in Mahabharata and all, you find across references that, if a woman is in a period and if somebody doesn't shed the sperm, it is considered that you are preventing a life to enter into this world and live its karma. So those references you find. So why I'm giving you these references is how much of a focus was given on good, trauma-free conception. Why? Because when you are conceiving someone, you are bringing someone, you are not doing a favor to anyone. You are not doing it for yourself. You are facilitating a life into this system, an independent life, a body where you are making your entire effort. That body will facilitate that soul, somebody asked, but I'm just giving, to live its karma. And it becomes your responsibility to only and only bring that kind of a life into the world. Of course, that whatever the child is born can suffer from some diseases, trauma. That is his karma. That is not your problem. But when you go into this with a lot of problems, you're not facilitating that passage. And that is the reason why that first sanskar is conception, which starts with 16 sanskaras and it ends with antya sanskara, which is death. So, these things have been put on. And whatever happens in the process, let us say that while having intercourse, you sneeze and a child turns, it is not your fault. Because you don't know when conception is going to happen. Sometimes it is said in a certain position, if your child gets conceived, he can be like that. It is not your fault. Because you did not think that conception will happen in this position. But by not going into conception with this free mind is your fault. And that is what is specifically said, that when you do this sanskar, the first sanskar, Garbhodpadan sanskar, whatever the word is, I'm not recollecting it, you have to be completely in sync within yourself and your partner. There is no difference between you and them. When you're coming together with proper rituals, with proper dress codes to increase your vitality, sexuality, with proper food, no diseases, so that this process will facilitate a vehicle for a passage to outlive his karma. And that is what has been mentioned in the text. So a lot of importance was given to it. I hope that little bit answers your question.
I think this is this question has come in, Dr. Sumit. What are the most important things one can follow in Ayurveda to positively affect the course of their pregnancy?
It comes on two portions. First, if you counsel someone for conception, you have to just see if they are in sync with each other in terms of their orgasmic progress. If you don't like having a particular action with someone, an intercourse with someone, they're just having it for baby, then it is not going to be proper. Of course, we cannot select a lot of time our partners in terms of a lot of attributes. But that inner cultivation, the sexuality is never towards someone, it is towards yourself. Are you feeling orgasmic? Are you in sync with your menses? Are you feeling that this is the time I can receive a seed? Then it doesn't matter with whom it is. So it starts from there. Once the seed is there, what can you do? The same question which I was answering the question before. What can you do to ensure that when it is going to come out, I am going to give it a complete, not for myself, because I have to bear the brunt. So how much you can give up your food, your likings, your cravings, how much time you can get up, be in sync with nature, follow someone a proper diet, to keep a light diet so that the child is growing properly. With someone who is knowledgeable, you can work with an Ayurveda practitioner or whomsoever it is. And do what is best for that system. Some people say, no, I cannot give up tea, I cannot give up this, I require. No. What kind of a hormonal response, an enzymatic response you're creating into your system? That is important. And of course, it can be facilitated with food, with herbs, whatever the practitioner says. It's very individualistic. I don't want to tell something just off the record for the sake of saying it. When the time comes, 6 months, 8th month, like 8th month, it is said that a vitality runs from mother to child, child to mother. So there is a more chances that a child might die in the 8th month. How much vigil you are. Then in the 9th month, can you start doing some physical exercises, taking enema so that your gases, whatever starts passing. So it facilitates whenever the labor comes, it will be okay. Do not stay in curtailed environments. Do not be too much in AC, too much outside. Just be in sync. So your thyroid acts for yourself. It starts giving you the labor. A lot of people stay in very comfortable environment. They don't even get any labor pains. Eventually they push, and eventually they put the Pitocin drip, and eventually they do cesarean, and then say, no, I couldn't help it. No, you have to prepare for it. Why? Because that will enable you to get quick recovery. You won't get post-pregnancy fat. Your body will come back into shape pretty quickly. So you're not doing a favor for the baby, you're doing a favor for yourself. So start preparing for it. After that, how much during the first 3 days you are trying to throw out your menses, placenta, so that you don't get this heavy breast, you don't get pain in the breast. How much good breast milk you can give. Even in pregnancy, if you eat on time, sleep on time, your baby will also eat and sleep on time, because in the womb it has got no sense of what is around it. But the moment it comes, it syncs with you. Why? Because I said a woman whose breath is in sync with her child will always be in sync when he sleeps, when he feeds, and when he sleeps. These are certain concepts which are given. And that is the reason where this concept of Garbha Sanskara comes. And, you have to feel that pulsation and manage your breath like that, so that your and your child's breath is becoming one. It is not like listening to something with a Walkman or a headphone and thinking, okay, I'm doing something chanting. That breath synchronization can you do. So these are subtle things which an Ayurveda practitioner, if you take the guidance and if you have the tenacity to follow it, you will do. The herbs, like whatever you talked about, Shatavari, Ashwagandha, these are very, indicative herbs. If you have a problem, give it. If you don't have a problem, not required. Even your rice water and milk and ghee is enough. So follow one path. Don't say I'm following this, but I want my vitamins, I want my carbohydrates. If you're following someone, follow that thought process completely. If you're following a nutritionist, follow that completely. You cannot have steps on both. Don't do unnecessary yogic practices because somebody said this is, pregnancy yoga. Follow one. Understand your system. Understand what is going to facilitate you. If you do too many things, and eventually there will be too many complications because so much of information is around. So these things, if you plan out properly, jot down, talk with right people, keep our priorities focused, I think it would be a very pleasurable experience and the recovery will be very quick and to the way you want.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sumit, for sharing always your wisdom and challenging our thought processes.